Hi, I'm Holly Goddard, and welcome to Leader, a digital leadership labs resource where we talk about tensions in leadership and practical ways to lead better. Today, I'm joined by Steve Cuss, author of the book, Managing Leadership Anxiety, Yours and Theirs. Steve is also the founder of Capable Life, an online community that helps leaders lower anxiety, relieve pressure and tension so that they can be connected, aware, and present. Steve is a native Australian who now calls the U.S. his home, and he is a former chaplain, a leadership coach, and a speaker who's served a variety of companies, including Clorox, Magnolia Home Furnishings, Chick-fil-A, and B-Mobile Verizon franchise. We're talking today about a topic that every leader can relate to, how anxiety shows up in our leadership and what to do about it. Steve, welcome. Thank you so much for being here.
Yeah, great to be with you, Holly.
Our teams read your book, all of our teams, and we benefited so much, so I'm so excited to talk to you about this today. And right at the beginning of your book, there was a line that just rocked me. You said, burnout has less to do with workload and way more to do with internal and external anxiety.
Yeah.
Can you unpack that for us?
Absolutely. Yeah. I think we are prone to think that burnout is related to I've got too much to do, I'm getting worn out. Almost every leader I know is actually energized by a big task or a big vision. What wears a leader down are the invisible dynamics in them and coming at them from others. When I'm working with leaders, it's usually imposter syndrome, inner critic, false needs, but then it's also staff tension, challenges in the workplace. That's what tends to lead to burnout.
Oh, so you mentioned two types of anxiety.
Yeah.
And most people probably think of the external anxiety, but you're saying
Right.
we've got an internal
Yes.
anxiety as well.
Yeah, and most of us, the problem is we pay attention to the external, or at least we feel it, and we tend to ignore the internal. So, for example, one of my false needs is people pleasing. I've been a chronic recovering people pleaser my whole life. Well, that's inside me. But if somebody's criticizing me, I'm less aware that my internal need is being activated. I'm more aware of the critic. But really, the secret is putting the attention back on myself and noticing what's going on in me.
That's great. So pay attention to what's happening in us.
Yeah.
And you say everybody has anxiety. It's inevitable and it's contagious.
Yes.
And as leaders, we have this power to set the climate control of our teams. So talk about how do we set the climate and what do we need to do to recognize our own anxiety?
Yeah, that's a great question. So, some people get tripped up by that word anxiety. I find it helpful to talk about reactivity because everybody understands reactivity. So when I talk about anxiety, I don't mean, some of those mental health disorders, but that idea of reactivity, it's the only kind of anxiety that's contagious. We catch it and we spread it to each other. So
It's like a virus.
It's just like a virus. So, for example, grief is not contagious. It's a form of anxiety. Trauma is not contagious. Reactivity is wildly contagious. And if a leader can put half of their energy on noticing the reactivity in the team and then half of it on the mission and vision of the organization, they will get further. Like they will become more efficient. Because most teams, most of their sideways energy is kind of vented through reactivity. Frustration, somebody coming in late and not taking responsibility for being on time. This is the kind of stuff that drives us all nuts.
So many triggers that could activate our anxiety, and anxiety has a lot of disguises.
Yeah.
Okay, so a lot of times, high-performing leaders, they really take a lot of pride of feeling calm under pressure.
Yeah.
But you write that anxiety can take on a lot of different forms like control or perfectionism is one. My personal favorite is overfunctioning.
Sure.
Yeah, I like to do that. So what are some signs that a leader's drive might actually be fueled by anxiety?
Yeah, it's tricky because most leaders are type A of some kind, and they've probably seen that as a strength. And what gets complicated is it certainly is a strength. It's when it becomes their go-to, their autopilot. So what a leader can pay attention to is, am I always dominating the room? Rather than is the situation requiring me to come in strong? And so what a leader's looking for is predictable patterns in themselves. Another thing a leader can look for is, where am I running into myself? Again and again and again. So for me, people pleasing, and overcommitting would be two simple examples of where I'm running into myself again and again. So we actually help leaders take we call it a high cost assessment. And one of the questions is, um, write down the names of everyone taking up too much space in your brain.
Oh, that sounds like a powerful exercise.
Right.
Yeah.
And you start to realize, okay, I've got a staff of 50 and these three are taking up 70% of my brain. That's the kind of unaddressed anxiety that leads to burnout. But once you bring these invisible dynamics to the surface, it's not difficult to do. It just takes intentionality. Even just bringing them to the surface and noticing them, you flip the power dynamic and you're no longer managed by anxiety. Now you're managing it.
So good. So just naming it and noticing it sounds like the first.
That's where you begin. There's a deeper rule. We always teach a 3-step process: notice, name, and then diffuse. It's real simple, but most people want to get to diffusing, but by the time they realize what's going on, they've gotten kind of fed up and they just want to diffuse it as quick as they can. We teach the counterintuitive move of spend some time noticing for a while. So, for example, if Jim is always late to a staff meeting, he's 12 minutes late and he always acts like he's not late at all. And it's just making everyone frustrated. Well, rather than addressing Jim now, just notice the next 2 or 3 staff meetings. And you're noticing Jim, you're noticing the team, you're noticing yourself. And then you're getting yourself back to connected. And now you're ready to address Jim.
So you're adding, besides noticing the external, you're starting to notice the internal.
Yeah.
So talk about the anxiety triggers a little bit, because it's pretty common for executives, managers, for all of us to have some anxiety triggers.
Yep.
What are the most common ones that you see? And then what do we do about them?
Yeah. The 5 most common triggers are control, perfection, always knowing the answer, being there for people, and approval. Those are the core 5 false needs of every human. And most of us aren't on all 5. Most of us have some of the 5. A perfectionist is often the easiest to notice. What you're looking for is your massive overreaction when you don't get it. So, for example, for a perfectionist, the kryptonite is a mistake. If a perfectionist makes a mistake, their body goes into like a little Armageddon. In reality, a mistake is no big deal, but their body tells them it's end of the world.
Wow.
For me, knowing the answer, that's one of mine. I really need you to know that I know something. So therefore, in a meeting, there's 2 things. Very hard for me to tell you I don't know. It takes energy for me to do that. Also, if I'm not well, I need to be the smartest person in the room. That is not good. That is not good for the team. And so those would be a couple of examples. And then I've already talked about my people pleasing. If I sense that somebody is disappointed in me, critical of me, my body actually moves into a threatened state. And I'm usually unaware of it. And then I'm just operating out of my reactivity.
Wow. So all of us have those triggers. It's just identifying.
Yeah.
What's your flavor?
Well, and the good news is your people can tell you. If you're not aware of them, it's very brave to do, but you can ask your people, or if you have a family, by the time a child is 10, they can tell you your triggers.
Oh, wow.
And you can just ask your kids or your workplace, you can say, how do you know I'm reactive before I know I'm reactive? And they'll tell you.
So someone will tell you if you're confused. That's good. I love this part in the book when you talked about that anxiety grows in the gap between what you can control and what you can't.
Yeah.
And so in these fast-paced cultures that we live in, especially in the business world, there's so much you can't control. You
Yeah.
can't control clients. You can't control markets.
Yeah.
We think we can control team dynamics, but really we can't. So how do we use this paradigm of what we can control and what we can't to help lead people through uncertainty?
That's a great question. There's 2 things that you can do. The first is you can make 2 simple columns in a journal, and it's what is mine and what is theirs. And just by doing that exercise, whatever it is that you're trying to figure out how to control, just getting clarity on what is mine to carry, what is theirs to carry, particularly for those of us like you are, Holly, too, right? An overfunctioner.
Yeah.
It helps us to right size and it helps us to release what we really can't control anyway. The second thing I coach leaders on, typically, if you're a vision-driven leader, you tend to think of your job as to convince. But actually, I coach people to spend less time trying to convince and more time trying to define yourself, define the organization. It's tempting when someone disagrees with you to move into an adversarial posture with them by convincing, which often just builds their resistance. But instead of that, if you don't worry about convincing them and just say to them, this is who we are, this is where we're going, and I hope you join us. I hope you come along and do it. I can't make you. It relieves the resistance because whether it's an employee, whether it's trying to get a kid to do their chores, like I work with so many parents and they'll say to me, I don't want my kid to clean their room. I want them to want to clean their room. I'm like, forget it. They're a kid. If they clean their room, it counts. So just learning as a leader, when I say define yourself, that might mean you as a leader. It might mean that you are defining the vision, the cultural behaviors, but you are not crossing into coercion where you're getting into someone else's brain. They still have the freedom of their own brain. So they can disagree as long as they comply. And if they don't comply, well, that's a deeper conversation.
It's so good because you leave the autonomy with them.
That's right. And they don't feel invaded. And you've created a space for them to step into, and now they own it rather than doing it under compulsion. I also got to say, my kids never wanted to clean their room.
No kids do.
Yeah. I just gave up that fight.
But you could still have the boundary.
They still had to clean their room if they wanted to have fun on a Saturday.
There you go. So I love that kind of idea of right-sizing what is yours so that you know what is yours to own and what's theirs. And so that's actually a great principle to help lead teams through change. And oftentimes it's easy to lead a team through change when it's your team because
or you're
you
the one
have
bringing
trust.
the change.
Yeah, if you have some history with people.
Yeah.
But a lot of times in leadership, we inherit a team or we inherit a system, and that system can be anxious or fearful or prone to burnout. So what do you do when you've inherited this system, but you want to make change? How do you shift the culture?
Oh, I love that. So, yeah, this is a really good question that I think deserves a longer answer. But if you have stepped into a team, particularly, let's say it's a team that is suspicious of you, their anxiety is pointed toward you. It's a very counterintuitive move to invite more of it. It goes back to that defining yourself rather than coercing. If I bring my energy to the room and try to convince people that I'm right or my way is right, all it does is build resistance in them. They end up having sideways meetings after the meetings. Everything goes underground. If instead I go in and name the dynamic and say, look, the reality is I'm new around here and you don't trust me, and that's fine.
Yeah.
I will never try to take your trust. Only you can give it. I would like to hear all of your concerns about what we're doing. And then I'm asking curious questions. Okay, what other concerns do you have? Is there anything you're holding back? And what you're communicating to that team is you're not a fragile leader. I can take your criticisms and I can take your disrespectful tone. But then, and this is where it gets more nuanced, sometimes the decision is salute and execute. That's the way it goes. There have been times where I have said to a team, thank you for sharing. This is where we're going. It's not up for discussion. And then there are other times where I'm able to say, I'm so glad you shared. That has shifted where we're going and how we're going to do it. You really made an impact. But either way, you're still moving forward, but you're not dragging people along. My leadership style is all about disarming resistance, not in a manipulative way, but in a way that people really feel that they can bring their whole self, all of their contribution. And then they generally give me more trust when I do have to make the unpopular decision, which happens from time to time.
Wow, that's such a great paradigm to move from coercion to disarming.
Yeah.
I really like that. I like how you talked about, you mentioned this just a second ago about the curiosity.
Yeah.
Sort of going into a team and saying, here's what I'm experiencing, but what else is there?
Yeah.
And you've talked about curiosity being an antidote to this anxious system.
Yeah.
So how do we get better at curiosity? How do we ask better questions? How do we cultivate that within us?
I love that. Yeah. So here's what's fascinating. People think the opposite of anxiety is calm. The opposite of anxiety is curiosity. And that's a fascinating idea, that if you are in a curious posture, you are less likely to catch and spread anxiety. When my daughter was an early teen, she would come home from school pretty grumpy about school most days. I'm a raging optimist, and I have a low tolerance for complaining. This is not always a good trait about me. And I found that the more she complained, the more frustrated I got as a dad. Now, what was going on in me is what I didn't realize is my own reputation as a father is being activated. If I was a better dad, I'd have a more grateful daughter.
Right.
It was fascinating for me. Instead of trying to convince her how great the world was, which all that did was make her try to convince me how hard her life was, I moved into a posture of curiosity. And so what everyone can do is just say to yourself, I'm going to ask 3 to 10 questions before I give my opinion. And hopefully you have enough natural curiosity. All you have to do is listen deeply to somebody, and it should generate more questions about their situation. What's weird about it is when people truly feel seen by you, their defenses go down. And so it is a double win there.
If you have a weak curiosity muscle, if it's a new skill, how do you build it?
Practice. Yeah. I don't know if I'm proud of this or not, but I would secretly set a stopwatch when my daughter came home from school, and I practiced for a year to go from how many minutes can I be curious before my brain tries to make her be grateful. And I went from a negative score, like I could hear her coming in the door and I've already queued up my
all
defense.
the things you want to say.
I went from that to 38 minutes.
Wow.
That is a hard-fought number. So you can practice. And maybe you're not going to practice with a family member. Oftentimes the people closest to you trigger you the most. But you can practice with a friend. And, you know, I have the great benefit of being a podcast host. So I'm kind of, I have to be curious to be good at my job. So I get a lot of reps at it. But I don't buy that people can't be curious. I just think
it's a skill to be developed.
You can practice it,
Well, here's another skill that we talk about a lot in the business place that maybe needs a little definition. We talk about self-awareness, and that sounds simple, but it's actually really hard in real time, especially when your emotions are flowing. So the temptation is for anxiety to creep in and then we react. We talked about that earlier. So what are the practical tools there to become more self-aware, to notice so that we can self-regulate?
That's a great question. We also have to say that self-awareness is the beginning of the journey because we all know self-aware jerks. They're aware and they don't care.
They don't regulate.
They don't care.
Yeah.
They're like, you deal with it.
Yeah.
And we're all like, well, we've all been dealing with it. We're ready for you to deal with
it.
The pathway to self-awareness is to notice predictable patterns. So it's very unusual, I wouldn't be able to do it, to be self-aware in the moment. What happens is you get triggered, you get reactive, like with my daughter Kaylee, and then later on you look back on that situation and you say, I was not at my best. I was not my best self. I wonder what was going on. You bring curiosity to yourself. And then the next time you're triggered again, and that usually happens 5 to 50 times. But now you notice a pattern. And that's what I did with my daughter. I'm like, oh, that's fascinating. Even before this poor young lady gets through the door, I'm armored up. I notice that about myself. So now that I know it, I'm aware for the next time it's going to happen. So most of us get triggered by the same people, the same situations, the same dynamics. We're all pretty predictable beings. That's a real benefit because now you can pay attention to those patterns and then slowly map it out kind of like a game of chess. And now you're ready to try to diffuse it.
Sounds like the most important person for us to lead is ourselves first.
The best asset a leader has to offer their people is a well self. One of the simplest tools I teach, I just get everyone to get out a piece of paper, 2 questions. Tell me about the best boss you've ever worked for. And they write it down. Tell me about the worst boss you've ever worked for. And the difference between the 2 lists, I've done this hundreds of times now, is somebody who manages their emotional field. It's really simple. It's the person that manages their own emotional field. And, the best boss I've ever worked for, I could be exactly myself around that person. And also I wanted to be my best version of myself just because of his posture.
Well, you talk about how anxiety is contagious, but sounds like so is health.
Connected presence is contagious, and everyone's starving for it nowadays.
Well, and peace. People want peace with themselves and with their coworkers and in their environment.
Right.
So how do we create the type of environment where we facilitate that peace, that well-being? How do we hand that off and kind of make that our new culture?
Yeah, it's a slow journey. 90% of emotional field management, reactivity management, 90% is managing yourself. And we're always thinking about others. It's just so counterintuitive to think about ourselves. It feels selfish. A lot of us, we're in leadership because we don't like thinking about ourselves. But 90% of it is managing yourself. And then the advanced work is creating a culture where your people have the freedom to manage their own emotional fields. Well, now everybody on the team is taking responsibility for themselves. And in my experience, the management load goes way down. Now, everyone still has a bad day.
Yeah.
The leader can have a bad day. That's life. But if you're all paying attention to your patterns, your triggers, and you're all committing to each other to both help each other with it and to take responsibility, it's crazy how quickly culture can be built.
Shift, yeah.
Yeah.
So it sounds like if we're at the top, if we're leading or managing in any capacity, our job is to role model this
Yeah.
stuff first.
Yeah.
Well, you've worked with hundreds of leaders probably at this point and helped their teams do this. What does it look like? What does a success story look like when we figure out how to be a non-anxious presence in the workplace?
Yeah. So what it looks like is the majority of the team, or at least the executive level of the team, are well connected to themselves and to each other emotionally. And that doesn't mean, like, once in a while, Holly, I'll have someone say, do you just sit around and talk about your feelings all the time? And I'm like, no, that sounds awful.
Yeah.
I'm not talking about like
not
some
counseling.
campfire
No.
thing. I'm talking about I have the kind of posture that you would like to be around. You have the kind of posture I would like to be around. When you have a difficult thing to say to me about me, I can hear it without feeling threatened, defensive, or combative. And so what I'm looking for in an organization is accountability going up and down the org chart. Unhealthy organizations, the people at the top of the org chart demand loyalty and health going down, but the people underneath don't get to share it up. And that really is a key distinctive. When I was a pastor of a church, it was really important to me that my executive leaders, all the way down to our college interns, could confront me anytime they saw me violating our behavioral values. We wrote out our behavioral values, which was simply, most organizations have values. We wrote out, here is how we want to treat each other as a staff, and here is how we like to get our work done. And we all talked about it and agreed on a set of values. But of course, none of us live up to it all the time. So then we had a section of, if you violate those values, here's how you make repair with each other.
Wow, that's so important. So you really elevated the results and the relationships.
We
And
did.
then when we get off, here's how we get back on.
And my executives confronted me, and I had college interns confront me when I was having a bad day. I had a college intern pull me aside, and she said, Steve, and it took her great courage to do it. She said, Steve, you say that the interns are the most important, but the way you act, we're not important at all. You don't make time for us. You look so busy. And that afforded me to say, thank you so much for showing me that. I feel so busy. So you are experiencing how my brain feels, and this is a great opportunity for me to work on myself, get back to connection. So if the accountability goes up and down the org chart, it works amazingly. If the top leaders only demand it of people under them, those people will leave.
Doesn't work.
They'll leave. Yeah.
So that sounds like that's a great vision for us to work towards.
Yeah, anyone
for
can do
going
it.
up and down the org chart. What's one step that you would leave us with today that we could move in that direction?
Assuming you're a safe person, getting your key executives in a circle and saying, when I'm at my best, what is the best thing about me? What is one trait you would like me to work on? And everyone going first. So whoever is the key leader, you go first. People will take your temperature on your level of vulnerability. But letting everyone speak into your best contribution and letting everyone speak into, when I am not at my best, what does that feel like? And so like one of my executives told me, he said, look, you're like this chill, easygoing person, but when you're not well, you get quite combative. I was not aware of that. And I said to them, I do not want you to experience me aggressively. And so thank you for telling me. And then I pledge, I'm going to work on that. And I would be grateful if you would help me by showing me when I'm being combative. It's very humbling, but it's very freeing because I don't have to feel like I have it all together.
Yeah.
My team are helping me and I'm helping them. It's quite a gentle way of leading, actually.
Well, Steve, thank you so much for this content, for these tools. You've given us so many tools that we can help to monitor our own anxiety and create really healthy teams. And leaders go first, so we're gonna put these into practice. Thank you so much for your time today. If you'd like to dig deeper into this content, we've created a free resource for your personal use as well as discussion questions you can use with your team. Just visit the link at the bottom to find the questions, and we've also included a link to purchase Steve's book, Managing Leadership Anxiety. Thanks for joining us for this leader to leader conversation. We will see you next time.